why are women not getting what they want? What's the barrier? What's in the way?
Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show.
How does a woman build her best, most intimate relationship? Living in a strong and intimate relationship is one of the most fulfilling experiences a woman can have in her life. Building that relationship is an entirely different story. It takes time, effort, and commitment, but the rewards are immeasurable. With the right mindset and guidance, any woman can cultivate a deep and meaningful connection with her partner. Join Kim, me, and our special panel as we explore the intricacies of cultivating a thriving and deeply fulfilling relationship. Pastor Frank Leggett III has been privileged to be in pastoral ministry for 40 years. He currently pastors at Grace Tabernacle Seventh-day Adventist Church in Norristown, PA. It was in this capacity that his ministry for women, the Women's Empowerment HQ, was born. He helps married and single women experience the love they desire, deserve, and have always dreamed of without compromising their values. His book, The Art of Womanhood, Teaching Your Man to Love You the Way You Want to Be Loved Without Him Knowing He's Being Taught, can be found on Amazon. Jessica Jennings is particularly passionate about conducting deep work that leads to long-term behavior change, which energizes her in her role as an elite KCN coach and therapist. She is also a seasoned licensed professional counselor with over 20 years of counseling experience in diverse therapeutic settings and works with her husband Jeff, who is also a licensed marriage therapist, to bring couples to the greatest marriage ever. She prioritizes promoting a compassionate environment that can eventually become the internalized experience of all her clients. Let us guide you towards the fulfilling and loving relationship you're longing for and genuinely deserve. Welcome back, everybody, to the Kick-Ass Couples Podcast. I am excited that we have a fantastic panel discussion. I have the favorite person in the world on my left. I get to do this with her, and I'm grateful to be here. And we have two amazing panelists I'm going to tell you more about in just a moment. The title of this special episode is, How Does a Woman Build Her Best, Most Intimate Relationship? And joining us to have that discussion today, we have Jessica Jennings. She is an elite KCN, Kick-Ass Couples Nation coach. She is in private practice in Charlottesville, Virginia. And she and her husband also have the greatest marriage ever, where they work with couples and individuals on how they can be and have the best relationships. Jessica, fun to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Our pleasure. And then we also have the dynamic, the guy who has, I think, one of the best smiles that I've ever seen, Pastor Frank Leggett. He is an author, a coach, a speaker, and he's been pastoring for a short 40 years and doing all kinds of wonderful things. So, Frank, we are so glad to have you with us and can't wait to hear what you have to say about this topic today.
Look, the pleasure is all mine, I can assure you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to do a little framing of a discussion here before we dive in. And the quote I want to share with you today says, "Dear men, you might think she wants your car, your money, and gifts, but the right woman wants your time, your smile, your honesty, your effort, and you choosing to put her as a priority." I found another great article from brides.com. It said, "What women want in a man according to experts." So here's 8 things. These are the 8 things they said. This is what women want out of a man. They said they want confidence, trustworthiness, integrity, compassion, emotional availability, respect, a sense of humor, and maturity. So coming out of the gate, I would love to hear from Frank and Jessica. Is it that easy? Do we just have to do those 8 things and we're golden? Or what is it that we have to do to have a woman build her best, most intimate relationship?
Jessica, ladies before gentlemen, beauty before age. So I'm gonna defer.
You're too kind. Well, that's a great question. I think a lot of women these days, men as well, but since we're focusing on women, a lot of women are searching for lasting love. They're searching for something that is going to be significant and meaningful and deep. And I do think those 8 things are really powerful and really beautiful, that they're focused on something under the surface. And I think our culture is so drawn, our eye initially is so drawn to the externals, right? And that's what we think matters most. But what if, as you're speaking of, that we are building into ourselves these qualities and then we are realizing we deserve them and therefore we are looking for them in the person and the relationship that we are building. And so I definitely think those 8 things are wonderful. I also think that looking beneath the surface to all these things that are more valuable than just what we see on the outside. I think that's going to be an important thing we're going to talk lots about in this episode. And I'm so excited to be here with you to mine the jewels and gems of what it is that we need to be looking for in someone else, but also cultivating in ourselves to have that depth of relationship that will truly satisfy.
Yeah, beautifully said. What would you add to that, Frank?
And I agree with everything that was said, including those 8 things. But here's my experience: wedding day. You've got the bride, you got the groom, you got the preacher, the priest, rabbi, whatever. You got the crowd, and the pastor, the priest, starts off addressing the husband first. And he asks a series of questions. He says, "Do you, husband, take this woman," calls her name, "to be your lawfully wedded wife? Do you promise to," listen to the words, "do you promise to love and cherish her, good times and bad, for rich or for poor, in sickness and in health, in good times and bad?" Every man on the planet says, "Yes, I promise to do that." And then we go about not immediately not doing one of them. Yes, many men love, but they are, in my experience over 40 years, I have found that there are few men who love and cherish their wives. Wives want to be loved and cherished. Look, wives, women are the best people on the planet with very few exceptions, which is my belief. And so women don't typically care how much money you have. They don't care how what you're driving. You don't have to drive the latest car. You don't have to put them in the most fabulous house. They want to know how much you love and cherish them. Are they a priority in your life? And when they are, there's nothing she won't do to please you. She will go to the ends of the earth pleasing you because you make her a priority. And when she's way down on your totem pole, the guy is going to have issues. She wants to be loved and cherished. That's my answer. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
You're sticking to it. Amen.
I
Woo!
love it.
Love that. And you know what? You said a word that I mentioned in my introduction, and Jessica touched on it too. Our platform at Kickass Couples Nation, and the reason we have this podcast is to teach people, Frank, how to prioritize their partner, their spouse, their husband, their wife. I'm a firm believer that's the only problem that people have in a relationship. Period. They're putting something else ahead of that person they said I do and I will. And I agree with everything that you had to say there.
Yeah.
Can I? Hey, Matthew, can I just jump in here and say this real quick? Let me say this real quick.
Yeah.
I was invited up to a church in April to do a presentation, and I was dealing with just the men. And I did the presentation talking about men need to love their husbands. That comes from Scripture, Ephesians chapter 5. And I said, you don't need just to love them; you need to love and cherish them. And the question was asked, Pastor, how do I cherish my wife? Well, first of all, you got to make her a priority. She can't be second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th on your list. She's got to be a priority in your life. And when she's cherished, she will feel the love and she will respond to the love.
Sure. Very well said.
So I feel like a woman has to really break through a lot of barriers to be successful at home, within her home, with her family and her children, at work, with her physical presence and being, and with her spouse and or her partner. And so, why are women not getting what they want? What's the barrier? What's in the way?
I think oftentimes women don't know or really understand um, what it is that intimacy fully entails. For example, I think that as you dig deeper, as you look at that word intimacy, it's to be fully open and honest about who you are. And I think the barriers that you're talking about, the fact that we don't think it's acceptable to be who we are. And so we don't bring our true selves. We bring what we think we need to be. And I think that stands in the way, even of a good relationship, even if you have someone who is listening, who is cherishing you. If you feel in your inner being as a woman that you are not loved and accepted as you are, you are not going to open up to that intimacy. You're not going to let someone see. And Jeff and I have done work early in premarital counseling about this radical acceptance that we need to offer one another that allows us to relax and rest into. And I have 3 things that I encourage women to do when they feel that desire to please, perform, perfect, to say, hold on, bring your presence. So that is a huge barrier, not externally to us as women, but internally, that we have been taught by culture or sometimes even by our families that we should be always pleasing, always perfecting, always, performing for someone. And what if in the most intimate moments of our life, we simply just need to bring our presence? What if that is healing and that is enough? And when we rest into that, these 3 R's, we rest into who God has made us to be. We receive that acceptance and love from our spouse, but also from God and ourselves, that we choose to accept ourselves. We will then rise into all we are meant to be, and we will find something that is really profoundly important that is missing in our culture. We will find something, the word is fulfillment. And it is a fruitfulness that we forget about because we see success as this external, tangible thing we want so much. I want my relationship to be successful, or I want my life to be successful. And we also need to incorporate this feminine fruitfulness that is about really opening ourselves up to seeing and being seen, knowing and being known, loving and being loved.
So I hear you saying bring our authentic self to the table and just be who we are with our spouse.
Yes. And if we're not feeling safe, that's where we want to be very open with the other person. And if we're not feeling safe to do that, maybe we need therapy or coaching, right? But to say, hey, I'm not feeling safe here. I'm feeling like I'm holding back. I want you to know me, but I'm scared. That is a great jumping off point if you feel overwhelmed and don't know where to start.
Sure. And I want to jump in because Jessica, you did a great point, and then we'll let Frank answer kind of that same question. But I think that my question for you was going to be, is it so if a woman doesn't feel safe, she's not going to be able or willing to bring her authentic self. So, in other words, because if they're not safe and they do it, they're fearful of what may happen if it's not received or ready to be received, right? So, that's a factor that lies within themselves, but it's also how does a woman face that then and not be a victim? Well, I would bring my full self, but is not going to receive it, therefore I'm not, right?
Mhm.
How can a woman be most authentic and show up and do everything that she can do because she can only control herself, right? And can't control the other side of that equation, or it can influence it certainly. So if a woman isn't comfortable, they shouldn't bring their true self. So I think you kind of had a question there by saying, "Hey, I'm not feeling safe, and I feel like I'm holding back. I need XYZ 1, 2, 3 to be able to really be present with you." And then it puts it back on the partner to give them that space where they can authentically show up.
Absolutely. I think that that's a wonderful observation. And I think it's hard to do that. But when we assume the best about the relationship, that helps to bring the anxiety down. When we say things like, I know we both want to deeply connect, this is what would help me. Or this is where I find myself afraid. Would you hold me? Would you be specific? Be very specific about what you need when there's fear involved. Because sometimes we need physical, tangible safety and security. Sometimes we need words of affirmation, and that's okay. But to be able to speak those out, and to know that your presence is healing both men and women when we're truly fully willing to show up and show love.
Sure.
Yeah. So, Frank, why I would love to hear from you. Why are women not getting what they want?
For me, the problem is real simple. Um, and obviously I've pastored for 40 years, so I come from a faith and spiritual background. Ephesians 5 is real simple, real clear. Husbands, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. So there were two things that Christ did for his wife, the church, that Paul says we ought to do for our wives. So we ought to be the lovers and the givers. You never have to tell a woman to love her husband. We men need to hear that message. Women are going to do that automatically. But the problem is, most men come into relationships, and I'm a guy, I know, I've done it myself. We come into relationships thinking we know how to love our women, and we come in loving them the way we know how to love them, the way we've loved our women in the past, the way we are comfortable with loving our women. But that is not necessarily loving them the way they want to be loved. And the problem is, women are the lovers, the givers, and the pleasers in the relationships. And so she's doing all the loving, the giving, the pleasing, and the sacrificing. And what she's giving is not coming back to her in the amount that she is giving. And so after a while, the average woman is going to get tired. How do I know? I ruined a perfectly good marriage because I was upside down in my marriage. And my wife got tired because she thought she created a monster. Because I thought that, she said to me, she literally got in my face and would say over and over again, I want to spoil you. I want to pamper you. I want to love you. I looked up to heaven and said, oh my gosh, I have arrived. And I thought that she derived pleasure from giving pleasure. So the very least that I could do is just receive what she was giving. She got down the road and she got tired. She felt that she created a monster who was incorrigible and that I was incapable of change. I loved the ground this woman walked on, but she drew a line in the sand and said, you're never going to change. She walked away and she didn't come back because we were upside down in the relationship. That happens in so many relationships, and women are fearful of saying anything to it because they're fearful of disturbing our comfort zone. Women, you cannot be fearful. If you are hurting and in pain, you got to go to your husband. Yes, you got to find the way to say it because your approach is everything. But if you're not happy, you've got to find a way to express that. You got to let him know what you need, why you're not happy, what's going on in this relationship. You can't suffer in silence because that will lead to separation and or divorce.
Are you tired of feeling like you're living with a roommate instead of a lover? Do you miss the days when you were completely into each other, intellectually, emotionally, and physically? The truth is, many couples are struggling behind closed doors. Putting on a brave face for the rest of the world is exhausting. If you want to get back your joy, return to thriving, and take pleasure in your marriage, then Kickass Couples Coaching and Matthew P. Hoffman are here to help. Join us alone or with your partner and start taking steps towards overcoming the pain-filled obstacles and improving your relationship right now. For a limited time, we're offering a free relationship assessment call. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com/coaching to book your free call now so you can start making real changes in your most important relationship today.
Wow, beautifully said. You know, there is so much goodness happening today. I love this conversation because I think we're busting through so many misconceptions and wrong ideas for women about women. And I think, you know, it's easy. Women have it harder. I'm going on the record right now. It is harder for a woman in a relationship than it is for a man because the women, I think, have so much societal pressure, expectations. As you were talking about earlier, Jessica, you said women are objectified so much more than men. Happens to men too, but nothing even close to what. So women have a much higher, steeper, harder hill to climb. But the expectations are also higher. So if we have one of our listeners, this is the next question, is sitting there going, okay, I hear you. Sure sounds good. But where do I start? If I want to work on getting my best relationship, and Frank, I'm going to ask you to respond to this first. Where should a woman start this process, or what should she start with on that journey?
So the women who come to my coaching program, here's where I start with them. And I walk them through a process. And I have them sit down and I say to them, you are the one and only expert on planet Earth that knows how you want to be loved. You're the one and only expert. Your husband is not that expert. You are. You know how you want to be loved and treated and cherished and pampered and spoiled. So what do you want? You've got to identify that. That's number one. And then you've got to share it in such a way. Now you can't curse him out and you can't go off on him because you're just going to drive him away. We are going to shut down and I am the master of the shutdown. Your approach is everything. But you've got to be able to share it in a way, in an environment where he's comfortable with having a dialogue, because as soon as the decibels go up, he's going to shut down. So your approach is everything. You have to share with him, what do you want? What do you need to be happy? And you got to have that dialogue. You first have to identify it, number one, and then number two, you need to share that with him in an environment that is conducive to having an open dialogue.
That's perfect. Well said. Thank you. Jessica, how would you answer that same question? Where would you tell a woman who's like, you know, Jessica, I hear you. It sounds good to me and I want to get there, but this is this is big and looming and it scares the bejesus out of me, right? Where should I start?
Absolutely. I think it sounds counterintuitive, but I absolutely agree with Frank. I think that you start at the point of pain or fear, that you identify, where is this hurting me the most? Where am I feeling the most discomfort? And take it down just a little bit if you can, and just allow yourself to be present with it so that you know what that is. Just like Frank said, you have to know, what is it that's most upsetting to me? What's bothering me the most? Now, again, as we understand ourselves, we are going to be able to then communicate and articulate it from that place of understanding rather than judgment. So judgment and fear are aligned, and love and acceptance are going to be aligned. So as we move into caring for ourselves and saying it matters what pains you, it matters what bothers you. And if you can't believe that about yourself, hear me say it. What hurts you matters. And your spouse may not be able to communicate right now that he cares, but trust me that there is that part that wants to be close to you, that he does want to be close. He just doesn't know how to get there. And when we then take our pain, understand it ourselves, and then assume the best about our relationship, that this isn't going to be easy, but it's going to be so good, when I come, as Frank said, in a way that is easier to understand, to say, hey, I know we both long to connect, but I'm feeling so disconnected from you. When I don't have you move towards me in planning a date or in pursuing me in a romantic way, I start to feel like a roommate or a friend or unimportant to you. And I end up, then fill in the blank, I end up looking for attention other places, or I end up shutting down myself, or I end up just focusing on the kids. And then I forget that I need you. And so we want to focus on the point of pain because we want to see where it hurts us the most. We want to understand it. And then we want to be able to communicate it in a way that assumes the best about our relationship and our spouse, because truly underneath all of it, we are desperately longing for connection. And when we bring ourselves, like I talked about, we're going to be able to find that bonding and that connection we're longing for. But there's a lot of hope in this as well. And a lot of people don't try because they've hit a wall of hopelessness where they feel like I've communicated it and I've not received any positive feedback. I've communicated it and I've not gotten any movement. But this is a very different way of communicating that has often a very different end.
I would love to talk.
Hey, can I say this one thing?
Yes, absolutely.
When I coach a woman in my program, I share this one thing, and some of them initially have pushed back to the concept. And here's what I share with them: because you are the one and only expert on the planet Earth who knows how you want to be loved, you need to teach him how to love you. I shared that message with my daughter. Her response was, Papa, I got 3 kids. I don't want 4. I'm teaching 3. I don't want to teach number 4. I said, well, baby, look, he didn't grow up with his dad. He doesn't know how to. You need to teach him, and you can, but you need to do it in a way that he doesn't realize he's being taught, because once he realizes he's in your school of love, he's quitting. He's going to drop out of school. So it needs to be done artfully.
I love that. So give me an example of being artful.
You can't come off as the teacher. You must say it in a way that you're drawing him, and you must appeal to his heart, because if he loves you, and many husbands love their wives, if he loves you, he's going to want to respond in kind. But you need to say it in a way that draws him and turns him on without thinking he's in your classroom and he's a student. There's just the whole approach to it. You got to say it lovingly. You got to lower your voice. You can't be screaming. You can't be doing your neck, back and forth, and he think he's being lectured. You got to have this is a dialogue.
So a couple of things I want to piggyback off of that. When you're saying that beautiful encouragement to lower your voice, it is unbelievable how that sings a song to our inner brain. Our primal fear brain is soothed by low tones. Scientifically, it is so helpful. The other element of is speaking from a low tone, but also getting low. In other words, if you can get to your spouse's level, if they're sitting on the couch, sit down next to them. If Jeff and I are in an argument, I will oftentimes sit on the ground while he is on the couch. I will look up at him and I will use a soft tone. And the reason I do that is because scientifically I know I am positioning myself not as small, but as non-threatening. And that's different. I am not small. I am absolutely the most important person in his life. But to be non-threatening is to tell his primal brain, you are safe here. And then like you were talking about, right, to assume the best is to sing to their heart. It's to tell them, I know how much you love me. You have to trust in that. But at this time, I'm not feeling connected to you because. So that's a great little way of assuming the best, because there is a part of us, and maybe there's a part of your heart right now that says, well, I don't know if he loves me. Then we can say something else to say, I know we both long for connection, because that is true. And maybe we've fallen out of this sense of rhythm and connection, so maybe we don't feel those loving feelings. But I know that we want connection. I know we want to build this relationship. And if you can't say it about the other person, you say it about yourself. I want to connect with you, because what a difference, rather than saying, you don't care about me, you don't ever ask me out on a date, versus what I call in my practice a positive opposite, which is to say, I long for us to have a fun night where we laugh and we dress up and we go out and we flirt with each other and we have great connection and conversation. Like, oh, I long for that. I miss you. I miss you. We're so good together. Like, what a different approach. What a different way of, as Frank said, teaching our spouse. Like, I need to be pursued. And then when he says, well, plan something, put it on the calendar, be like, no, it doesn't have the same ring to it as when you text me something and you say, hey, babe, let's go out this weekend. I want to spend time with you. I need you to pursue me. So we're teaching how, like, how do you pursue me? No, don't just put that on my list of to-dos, because my list of to-dos for a woman usually is super duper long and super duper hectic and little tiny things of going to the doctor and making the dinner and la 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 la. And all those things are hugely important, but often fall on the woman. And not that that always should be, let's divide and conquer, but sometimes that happens. And so to say to your spouse, not only do I need a date, but it means so much to me when you're the initiator and you pursue me and I'm the one who's being pursued. That's important to me. And so continue to communicate in those ways. And I think it will be so much more successful and helpful.
I want to talk a little bit about the importance of self-care, a woman's self-care, and how that impacts your relationship. And what I mean by that is what is our physical, our spiritual, our mental fitness, right? And so, Jessica, I'd love to start with you. Tell me how we can really adopt that self-care and what benefits it has.
Absolutely. I think Jeff and I even just had this conversation about physical exercise and even just taking time out. That's something that's very hard for me because I tend to prioritize whatever's right in front of me, whatever's going on. So it's almost like the squeaky wheel gets the oil in my book. I have a little bit of distractibility and I like to get things done that are right in front of me. And so to get my priorities straight, I need to do my workouts early in the morning and I need to make it simple and short, like 20, 30 minutes. And for me, it's very, very important that Jeff also safeguards that time for me by offering to do other things. If I'm saying I have a really crazy hectic day, will you take my daughter so that or will you do this? And that's going to free up some time for me to focus on myself. Because when I'm doing that, I'm so much more clear-headed. I feel more energized. I feel this is not about my appearance. It's about my self-care and about making certain that I'm well and that I'm energized and that I'm fully able to be present. And then I'm also prioritizing my own physical being and my own body, which is something that a lot of women, I feel, aren't able to do because there's not sometimes that support and there's not always that priority placed on them. And that slides down the list and sometimes even way off the list.
Sure. How about you, Frank? What would you have to add to that and maybe focusing on the spiritual impact?
Well, I would include more than just the spiritual. My concern for women, the average and typical woman and wife puts everybody in the family before herself. The husband comes before her, the kids come before her, the dog comes before her, the house comes before her. Everything and everybody. There are even women who have broken down and said, you know what? I'm going to the mall, I'm going to the store, I'm going to buy me something today. And then they get it home and feel guilty and take it back because it felt so selfish. My philosophy is how can you love somebody else and you don't even love yourself first? And so women need to realize how valuable they are, how important they are, and you need to take care of yourself. And I believe everything that Jessica said. You need to work out. You need to look good because marriage is for a lifetime. It was destined to be for a lifetime, and so you don't want to get halfway into the marriage and you're no longer desirable to your husband or he's no longer desirable to you because you're both way out of shape and nobody looks good. You don't go to the dentist. You don't do all of those important things. All of those things are self-care. that needs to be done. Go to the dentist, get your teeth fixed, go get your teeth cleaned. All of those things. Go to the barbershop, go to the beauty salon. You need to look good for each other because you still need to be attractive to each other. And then on the mental, on a mental level, sometimes you gotta go. You have issues that's bigger than you and bigger than your spouse. Sometimes you got to go and talk to a professional. Sometimes you got to go get a therapist. Sometimes you got to go get a coach. And there's nothing wrong with investing in you and just to get a third opinion, whether it's just you or your husband. Or you and your husband. Sometimes you got to go and receive that self-care. It is vitally important, and we're better off when we do.
Yeah, I see that as enrichment, honestly, and how important it is that we enrich our marriage with information that we can learn and grow from.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that one of the fallacies we hear is that men are much more interested in intimacy than women. And it's a fallacy because women are really interested in intimacy. They're just not always interested in sex. And when you ask a man what intimacy means, most men, not all men, will go, "Oh, sex," right? And that is a form of it, but there's so much deeper things that go behind and before that to occur. So I'd love to hear from both of you. Jessica, maybe you'd start is what is what is the role, the best role for intimacy in a relationship, and what can a woman do to make it work best for her so she is satisfied and fulfilled and getting what she needs?
Absolutely. I definitely think that that sense of connection and intimacy is going to start with just that that openness, like we talked about, that sense of safety. And so if you're open and feeling a greater sense of safety because you're able to communicate about what you need, you're getting more of your needs met, that is going to lead to a greater sense of knowing one another. And I think sometimes in our culture, we are focused on that, just that attraction. I believe that attraction is necessary to come together, and there's a need for attraction, but there's also this other deeper element that happens when we're open and willing to be intimate with one another. That's bonding, and whether it be emotional intimacy or physical intimacy, we're actually releasing a chemical called oxytocin in our bodies when we are feeling safe and we are emotionally and physically intimate or sexually intimate with one another, that draws us back together. We feel more vulnerable. And I need women to know this, that for women, oftentimes we are going to need emotional, psychological intimacy or connection with our spouse in order to want sexual intimacy. And for men, it's not wrong. It's not bad. It's just different. They are going to want physical or sexual intimacy before they open up. That's why you have that little quote, pillow talk. That what is that? It's actually the men who are more able to open up in intimacy emotionally after sex has happened. And so it's exciting to think about it this way, that as we are open, of course it is about total authentic desire on both parts, but to remember that both of you can open up to these other levels that maybe aren't quite as immediately natural for you. Like for men, maybe it's like, it's not natural for me to talk about my feelings. But as you talk about them, as you open up, you're opening up the gate for even more physical intimacy. And for women to say, oh, I don't always feel comfortable, or I don't always feel like I'm in the mood. But as you open yourself up to that exploration of one another physically, that also leads to more emotional intimacy. So if we're both willing to just explore some of these other avenues of intimacy, it will allow us to feel a greater wholeness. Now, of course, I'm always for absolute consent on both parts. At the same time, an openness really helps with that. An openness helps facilitate greater intimacy, because Jeff and I get in our worst fights when we haven't had sex. It's like, oh my gosh, we we need to be intimate. We haven't even thought about it because we're so busy, and we oftentimes get in a fight because we need each other, and we realize, oh, that was our way of cueing each other. I don't like that cue. I don't like to fight or argue, but sometimes it's like, oh yeah, and we tend to do that. So let's be intentional about emotional intimacy that leads to physical intimacy, but also, y'all, let's also be intentional about physical intimacy that leads to emotional intimacy. It's both ways. And don't forget to play, because playfulness is also a huge aphrodisiac. Like, we forget to go to that place of play with one another. It builds that sense of intimacy to play. So look at all these creative, beautiful ways of finding your spouse and connecting with your spouse. And if you're hesitant to do one of them, go to counseling. Explore what that is, because you may be closing off to something really beautiful in your relationship.
That's great. You gave us a lot of great angles to think about, Jessica. And so, Frank, coming back, what would you say, how does a woman make intimacy the best it can be for her? What would you add to what Jessica shared with us?
Are you struggling to maintain the emotional and physical intimacy you once shared? Do you feel like you're spending more energy finding fault and tearing your partner down instead of magnifying their good and building them up? Don't worry, you're not alone. Many couples are struggling behind a forced smile and an inauthentic happiness. You feel drained, unheard, and more often than not, unappreciated. The good news is it's not too late to rekindle the flame and strengthen your bond. I'm offering a free relationship assessment call to help you take the first step towards revitalizing your relationship and reaching your own relationship nirvana. Whether you come alone or with your partner, I'm here to help you create the space for a more fulfilling and satisfying relationship. Don't wait any longer. Make the changes you need to thrive. Book your free call today at matthewphoffman.com/coaching. And let's get started on your journey to a kick-ass relationship.
I share with couples in particular and people in general that, and I'm sure many of you know this reference. Dr. Willard F. Harley wrote a book, excellent book. I recommend it to everybody. His Needs, Her Needs. He interviewed 1,500 couples to ascertain their most important needs. The number one need of men in that interview, not surprisingly, was sex, right? Number one. And so when I asked my audience, what number do you think sex came in for the women in that interview? It was number 13, which means there were 12 things more important to her than sex that needs to happen before there can be an intimate connection. My wife taught me. My wife passed away from COVID 2 years ago. And so I'm single, but she was an incredible woman. And here's what she taught me. I'd climb into bed at night and I'm ready to play. And girlfriend would say to me, you can't ignore me all day long and then expect me to get in bed and perform miracles at night. Girlfriend said, and here's the key word that women need to understand. Foreplay begins in the morning. I started washing dishes. I started helping her around because I did not like that. Women have to have that emotional connection so there can be the spiritual, the sexual intimacy. A woman can't disconnect the two. We can hop into bed with a perfect stranger. And it happens all the time. One night stands. They call them something else today. Young people call it something else today. But we can hop into bed with a perfect stranger. Typically, women, that's not how women operate. They need to connect with their men on an emotional level so that they can be free on an intimate level.
Sure. Frank, I think you just came up with your second book title. It's called Foreplay Starts in the Morning, okay? That's a
Actually, I
great
think it's
title.
great.
I mean, you know what? It's going to be Yeah.
You know what? You know what? You know what, Matthew? You know, Matthew,
I'll
you just
co-author it
might
with
be
you.
right.
I'll be you let me know. I'll be a contributor. Let me know. No, I love that thought, and you are so right. That is just great wisdom and experience, and I loved hearing what both of you had to say on that.
Yeah, and what about, Jessica, appreciation and validation? How does that play a role into this intimacy piece?
Absolutely. Gratitude is such a huge part. It is so interesting that when couples are asked about this aspect of their relationship, if they're not being appreciated, there's a huge bitterness and resentment that starts to rise up because all of us need to be seen as valuable. And when we're not valued and we're not appreciated, when there's not gratitude for what the other person's doing and for who the other person is, for how they bring that light, that sense of connection into your life, when you're not recognizing it, it brings a whole lot of resentment. So be very intentional because it's easy to let that slide. It's easy to let that go unnoticed when that person walks the dog or makes dinner or takes out the trash or pays the bills. All those things are so monotonous and so oftentimes thankless. We don't want to let them be in our relationships. We will benefit one another and we will help the other person be built up in the relationship when we acknowledge in gratitude.
Sure.
Yeah, knowing and feeling that you're treasured just makes your heart sing, and there's no better feeling, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great way to say it. So true.
How about for you, Frank? What would you add to that?
um, Referring back to Dr. Harley's book, um, one of the top five needs of the man was just having his wife and the woman in his life appreciate him and express that appreciation. We will we will climb any mountain. We will climb the deepest, steepest mountain. We'll swim the deepest ocean. We'll jump the highest hurdles and overcome the most incredible obstacles. When we feel that you value us as men and husbands in your life, it it does. We will go through a brick wall for you when we know how much you love and value and appreciate us. It is a game changer in a relationship.
Sure. I love that. I want to share something with you all. There's an article by Dr. Audrey from medium.com, and there are 4 emotional requirements a woman needs from her man. And I'm going to let you know what she said. She says the 4 things she needs is his love, his leadership, his support, and a sense of safety. So, my question coming right back to you guys, the two of you, is what can a woman do to get those 4 things consistently in her relationship? What can she do to get his love, the leadership, the support, and the sense of safety? What is it that a woman should be doing that's going to bring those things right back to her and fill her up? What would you say to that, Jessica?
Well, I think there's so many ways. There's so many avenues, but as we talked about earlier, just bringing your authentic self and then making a request for what you need the most, because so many men are going to have some of those things and they may struggle in other areas. So I would say definitely communicate respect through acceptance of who you have married, who you're with, to radically accept that everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes we actually are with someone and their strengths are very different than ours. But there's also a beautiful complement that goes with that. And so we want to accept and appreciate, like we talked about, but then also be able to communicate clearly the aspect that matters the most to us and clearly communicate what we need. As we believe we are worthy of that, to ask for it is really a simple thing. It's when we aren't certain if we're worthy of it or we're very hurt and feeling unworthy of something that oftentimes it becomes a greater barrier. And so if there's one of those things you're not consistently getting, if you're not consistently getting one of those aspects from your spouse, to be able to know that you are worthy of it, and to talk about it humbly with the sense, again, of assuming the best about your spouse, of accepting your spouse, and then also asking for what you need. It's going to really set an amazing tone for the request that you're making. And then asking, how can I support you in this process of growth? Because we're all in this together, and we're all imperfect. We're all growing. And if we can recognize that and not be a judge, but be someone walking with and encouraging and supporting and also observing, it will go much better.
Sure. Frank, what would you add to that? What can women do to get those things from their man and get them to show up for what they need them to be?
I believe this, I teach this, and I have experienced this. That a wife is a game changer in a man's life. I personally believe that beside every good man is an incredible woman. I believe it with all my heart and soul. However, she cannot allow him to live down to what God has called him to. I believe that God has gifted every woman on this planet with the specific gifts that she needs to be able to hold her man to a higher standard, to take him higher. Now, there's an art in doing that. She needs to say it the right way. And Jessica said it, and I love what you said, positioning yourself so that you're not demeaning yourself, but you're not threatening his manhood, because our manhood is very fragile. I don't care how many muscles he's got. Manhood is real fragile. And when a man sees that his wife loves him and supports him and motivating and inspiring him to be better than he is, that goes a long way. I will tell you that I am the man that I am because of my wife. She changed my life because she held me to a higher standard, because I was a mess when I married her. And she held up the standard and required me to meet that standard. I do what I do today, even though she's not here. I do what I do. I am who I am because she motivated and inspired me to be better than I am. My love for her will be eternal forever because of the impact she's had on my life.
That's beautiful.
So challenging your spouse basically to be a better version of themselves is what I hear you telling our listeners, and how important that is for a man.
Absolutely. A woman can come into an underachieving man's life. And when she's done with him, when she's mastered the art of womanhood, he can soar into the stratosphere, because when you say it, we believe it. When you say I can do it, I'm going to get it done. When you say I can go through that brick wall, I don't know what's going to happen when I get to the brick wall. I don't know if it's going to part this way or that way, or it's going to disintegrate. All I know is I'm going through the brick wall because you believe in me.
Yeah, that's huge. I think in around the idea of partnership is that
Yeah.
you have to kind of be a woman needs to know that she needs to be what she expects her partner to do for her. It's kind of like you're calling them out and you're inviting them to lean into and step into the best version of who they are, who they've been called to be, as you both have said, and we agree. We all have that calling, and you are setting their expectation and the aim high, and then giving the man the opportunity, the other person in that relationship, the partner, to step into what their greatness is supposed to be. And when a woman does that for a man, or anybody, any partner does that for the person they're dedicated, they've committed their life to, how can you not help but soar and feel that support? And because it's mirroring your desire, and
Mhm.
you're giving them, you're being a servant leader, because you're saying, hey, see what I'm doing for you? You can do this for me too, because women want and need, they have the same need. They're not that different in that sense. They want to be held to the highest standard. They want to be told, I believe in you, you can do it, you're capable, I'm going to support you, and let's go. Because that gives the woman the wings the same way. And if she models it first for the man, then you're creating the pattern. And it's easy for a man to walk in and go, man, you've done it for me, I know I can do this for you too. And I love that. And golly, what
I know,
what
this has been amazing. You both are incredible. I guess my only final question might be, and I'll start with you, Jessica. Is there anything that we haven't asked you that you just have a burning desire to tell our listeners?
I want every woman out there to know that she is unique, that she is like none other, and that as a woman, sometimes the reason we feel like we cannot be loved is because we are not comparably to other people better than them. And that comparison will kill our joy as women. And so I would encourage women, do not compare yourself. Recognize, just like the seed, like a apple seed is perfect and has everything it needs to become what it was intended to be, that you are in that way perfect, that you have everything in you to grow into who you were intended to be. Now, are we at our fulfillment yet? No, none of us are. And that's okay. That you are exactly who you need to be, and you have what you need to be to become who you are going to be. And this is beautiful, that you're irreplaceable. That if you see yourself in your family, at work, don't let anyone tell you that you can be replaced, because you can't. And the bonds you're forming with the people you love the most are irreplaceable bonds. And so take that very seriously. Show up fully for, first and foremost yourself in self-care, and then show up with others, knowing that your presence is healing and that your uniqueness is beyond compare.
That was incredible. It made me just get goosebumps because we all do have something very unique to bring to the table. And we should never, ever discount that. We should know that. How about Frank? What would you say to tag on to that?
I would say that unfortunately, um, in my experience, my coaching experience, I've identified 30 mistakes that women routinely make in their relationships inadvertently. Now, not all women make all 30, but all women make. Every woman I've ever coached makes the first 6 or 7. One of the most egregious is because women are so selfless. They're lovers, they're givers, they're pleasers, they're sacrificers, and they're doing all the loving, and all this love is going out, and very little is coming back. um, it's okay for you to be loved the way you want to be loved. That's not selfish. That's self-preservation. And so many women have issues with that when I share that with them. In fact, I put it in the title of my book. My book is entitled The Art of Womanhood. The subtitle is my message to women. Teaching your man to love you the way you want to be loved without him knowing he's being taught. It's okay for you to be loved on your terms and not on his. Because when we love you the way you want to be loved, we get it right every single time. But if we love you the way we want to love you, if we love you the way we are accustomed to loving you, or the only way we know how to love you, it's a crapshoot. We may get it right. Most times we're going to get it wrong. And so if we love you the way you want to be loved, we get it right every single time. But if we love you the only way we know how to, it's going to be a crapshoot, and most likely we're not going to get it right. And so the woman is going to end up unhappy. I'm going to close with this. Here's my experience. Most women teach their men how not to love them. Now that's an oxymoron. That is absolutely counterintuitive, because we women do that because you're so focused on loving him and not requiring it back in return. So if you don't get it back in return, I don't care how awesome your dating process was. If love and appreciation and value and worth is coming back to you in a trickle, after a while you're going to get tired and problems are going to ensue, and then your relationship is going to be in jeopardy. It doesn't have to be. We need to give to you the way you're giving to us. It's okay for you to be loved the way you want to be loved. That's not selfishness. That's self-preservation.
love it. Well, gosh, we could keep this going
I
on.
know.
And I know y'all have more things to do, but we are so grateful for your presence and what you have shared. And it is truth. And I'm hoping if you are a woman out there and you're in a relationship or you want to be in a relationship, that you take these things to heart, because you are priceless. You are treasured, you are valued, and you are capable, but most of all, you are deserving. And we want every woman to feel that in a relationship. Jessica, if people want to learn more about you, connect with you, call you, work with you, where should they go?
Yep, they can visit greatestmarriageever.com. Look us up.
greatestmarriageever.com. And you will see Jessica and her incredible husband, Jeff, who we love also. Frank, how do people connect with you? Where can they get your book? How can they work with you if they want to do that?
All of that information is on my website, theartofwomanhood.org. Everything is there.
theartofwomanhood.org. Well, again, we hope you will reach out to them. We hope if you're listening to this that you're going to share it with other women, because these are all great things you need to know. Thank you for joining us today. We are most grateful. It's
Yes,
been
thank
incredible.
you.
This will undoubtedly help a lot of people, and we are going to be talking and sharing about a lot of the things we discussed for quite some time. So there's only one thing we want you and our listeners to remember.
Happily ever after doesn't just happen. It's on purpose.
Thank you both.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.